Let's see how a lot of this is actually going to work. Next slide, please. So first off, let's kind of do a high level, how is the demo going to flow? So step one is going to be taking those backups, and the backups are going to happen through that snapshot that Semyon talked about. We'll have our production database. That's going to be our highly available cluster instance that's connected to our Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP storage. And then we'll also have our dev environment, which is going to be a standalone instance, our lower environment, but it will also be attached to our storage through iSCSI. So after we take that backup, we're going to restore the backup over the top of the production database we just took it from to show some protecting data and rolling back changes if we need to. So that'll be the first operation, is to restore. The next step will be to take those same snapshots and leverage them to clone that whole production environment into the dev environment. And you're going to see some pretty amazing numbers there. For example, here, we're going to have a 3.1 terabyte database. And I'll let you make some guesses in your mind about how long you think it's going to take to clone that. And then when we do the demo, we'll see how close you were. Okay, so that's the demo. And then the tooling we're going to use, which is an important part of the conversation here, is SnapCenter. This is a management tool that talks to the FSx technology. It allows you to initiate those snapshots, initiate those clones, take the backups, do scheduled backups, T-logs, full backups, all the things you're used to through a SQL Server backup strategy. It is a tool that's provided as part of having that Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP functionality of the service. So this is a free-to-use tool for those, when you have that configuration with an AWS. So there's no, it does need to be hosted on EC2, but it's a great tool to use. With that, let's jump into the demo. And this is a pre-recorded demo, just because we're going to do some fast forwarding. You'll see here we have our SQL instance on the left there, and that's going to be where we're housing our production database. We have our TPC 1000, that's 147 gig. And our TPCC 30,000, that's our 3.1 terabyte database. Okay, so this is SnapCenter, and here we have our databases that are being protected. And you'll see here we have the, actually, let's jump over and show you these are the pre-configured backups. So we have daily backups, system backups that are running daily. Then we have T-log backups that are running every 15 minutes. And these are all pre-configured to run against the databases that can see. But here you'll see we have those databases. And the first thing I want to do is initiate the backup of the 147 gig database. And this is just telling me it's an out-of-band backup, and that's fine. So you'll see the bottom here, we have our monitoring of the jobs that are running. So if we pull that up, we'll see that it took about 9 seconds to complete that operation. So 147 gig backup, 9 seconds using that snapshot technology. So let's go ahead and do the same operation, but now we're going to use that 3.1 terabyte database. We're going to do another backup now. Yep, next, and we're just going to say yes to that message. And then we'll look at the activity log at the bottom here, and you'll see it's running, and click on there, and we'll see how long that took. So this one, 3.1 terabytes, also took about 9 seconds. And that's really that snapshot technology we're talking about, and how it really can be a game changer for your very large databases. Okay, so let's go ahead and refresh what we have here to pick up those last two backups that we just took. And what we're going to do here is, we typically took backups. Now what I want to do is show you making some changes to the big database. So let's run this, and you'll see that table doesn't exist. So the backup we just took, table doesn't exist. So let's go ahead and create a table, drop a few records into there, and run that. And okay, so now we have a table with 6 records living in the 30,000, the large 3.1 terabyte database. So let's go ahead and do another backup so we can pick up the change that we just made. So we'll go ahead and run that. Again, this is running against the 3.1 terabyte database. We'll wait for that to complete, and then we'll check the status. And this one took about 12 seconds, so it was pretty close. Okay, so we've got that backup taken. So now we have a backup pre-table being created and then post-table being created. So let's go ahead and just do a refresh here, and that's going to show the backups that we took. Click there. And then hit the refresh up on the console here. Okay, so now we have those two last backups, one before we created the table and one after we created the table. So what I'm going to do is grab the database that we took before we created the table, and we have a few options here. We're going to do basically a restore with recovery. We also have the an option to do to an alternate host if you want to restore to a different server, or basically do existing database files, more of an attach operation. But we're going to do a traditional restore over the top. There are no T-logs here. It is supported, but we're not going to use those today. I am going to check to overwrite the existing production database and remove that table we just created. Okay, so here we have options. We can do operational, which is basically with recovery. We have a non-operational, meaning we are going to allow additional transaction logs to be applied if we're going to do a rolling backup. But here we're just going to do operational, which is immediately usable. We can send an email. We're not going to. That's the summary. Okay, so we fired off the database backup. Let's go ahead and check the status of that. We're going to do a little fast forwarding here to get to the endpoint. Okay, and that completed. That took about 8 minutes, give or take. That's doing a complete restore over the top of the existing database. So there's actually a bit to do there. And now we can go check that system and run that first command again. So now with that restore, the table has been removed, and now we remove that change from the production environment. We could have dropped the table, which would be less dramatic, but to show that we can do the restore. So now what I want to do is I'm going to take the backup that I made with the table, and instead of restoring it, I'm actually going to do a clone operation. So this is the production database that I'm going to send, and I'm going to select our standalone dev box, SQL Dev here. So this is there. We're going to select the instance. SQL Dev is the instance. I'm going to give the database a name. We'll call it -clone, just so we see it. And then we have choice to either auto-assign a mount point or actually provide a directory and have a mount point hosted under that directory. But we'll leave auto-assign for today. Again, there are no T-logs here. It is supported, but we're not going to use those today. If we had to do some post-restore, pre-restore, cleanup for the production data being, desensitized, whatever, we could run that here if we wanted to. No email configuration, so we'll skip that. And then the summary. Okay, so this is the clone operation of that 3.1 terabyte database. So that is running. And these are application consistent, remember. So there's no crash recovery happening here because it is an application where it quiesced the disk. And you'll see there, that took 30 seconds. 30 seconds to restore 3.1 terabytes to dev. So that, I don't know what number you had in your head when we talked about it earlier, but 30 seconds for 3.1 terabytes to make your dev environment completely refreshed. That's, as I said, I think that's a game changer for refreshing lower environments. So the whole demo you just saw was all GUI based, which is great. But obviously, if you want to do any kind of automation, we need to have a PowerShell version of this, or a script-based version. So I'm basically going to repeat the demo you just saw quickly, but completely PowerShell, command line driven. So I just connected to our system center, and now I'm going to initiate that first backup you saw of the TPCC 1000, and that then we can check the status of that backup, and we'll run that just to see, and it'll give us the information about what the backup was called. It took this one took about 22 seconds. Just kind of depends on what else is going on in the system. And now I'm going to run the full backup of the 3.1 terabyte database. And you'll see these commands are, you'll have this when you get the video recorded, so you can easily use this if you want to. But this is to really show you we can do the automation. We'll just grab the job ID, that 318, and we'll plug that in there. And then we'll run to get a status on this backup command. And this will give us, so this one took 9 seconds. So we can get this. You can see how this is going to lend itself very well to automation. If you want to, script out your lower environment refreshes to happen, after hours or every hour, whatever you need. So now we're going to do that restore over the top of the existing database. And we'll go ahead and check that 319 as the job ID, and we'll just check the status of that restore. And we'll run that. And that's going to give us this thing that we figure out the time there. And then the last piece of the demo that we did is that cloning to the lower environment. So here I'm going to run the clone command, all the same elements, but command line driven. And then we'll check the status of that job 323 is the code there. We'll plug that in there. And this is, again, the cloning to the lower environment. Let's run that, and we'll get the status for that one. And that actually took 21 seconds. So we took 30 seconds when we did it with the GUI. This time we ran it, it took 21 seconds. So again, it can go fast. It just depends what else is going on in the system. So that was the end of the demo. I know it went fairly quickly there, but you will see the recording if you want to revisit certain pieces. But just demonstrating speed. Cloning a lower environment. I know if you've had to refresh lower environments in the past, it can be painfully long. Using cloning, I didn't incur an additional 3.1 terabytes on my storage system. I'm not paying for the double capacity like Simeon talked about. Now we have, thin clones, but it took me less than 30 seconds to clone that low environment. It really is a game changer for refreshing a reporting environment or just getting your developers the latest and greatest version of their dev test environments as they need to.